Hi, this is Michael Hurd, and I, I'm on the line with Michelle Murray, and we're doing a little interview here for Stephanie and my website, ADHD Expression, and just here to talk with Michelle about her story with ADHD and perhaps some strategies and success stories that she's had with it. So, tell a little bit about yourself, Michelle.
Okay, well, I'm Michelle Murray, and I'm from the South, as everybody can tell. And I'm originally from Charleston, South Carolina, and I lived in Atlanta, and then now I'm in Charleston right now. But I was a model for a long time, so I've lived in Japan and also in Germany. And I'm really excited to be able to talk about ADHD. And do you want to ask me questions,
Yeah,
or
like,
do you want me to just tell you whatever? I might get off target.
well, hey, that's
Whatever.
understandable with ADHD. That's why we have that little
Uh-huh.
sheet of, just kind of focus, but questions, just like going, hey, you know, when did you first get diagnosed with ADHD and how are you right now with it?
Well, actually, I I was never diagnosed
Okay.
until well, no, I mean I'm diagnosed now, but as a child, I was never diagnosed.
Mm-hmm.
And I even went for testing when I was 17, and they never caught it. They never
Oh.
caught that I was ADHD. And when I go back and I look at the papers that I've read, it says that I was in the testing, it says I was yawning and I was really tired and all these things, but they just never caught it. And for a, I, it really got hard for me after I had my son,
Mm-hmm.
and it got really hard for me then. And I was reading something and it said, do you have piles piled up? Do you have things that you say you're going to do and you haven't done them yet?
Mm-hmm.
And I would have things and I would look over and I'd go, well, how am I going to start that? And I would involve somebody else. Like, how should I start that? I couldn't do it on my own. It was like I had to make it, get someone else to help me or to
Yeah,
help me
get that
motivate
team
me.
going to help. Like,
Yes. And go ahead.
well, just my wife's the same way. Like we talked the other day on our videos how for her she needs somebody else in the room just to keep her on task to go through that pile.
That that's true. That's really true. So I go and I'm like, well, how am I going to get, I don't have, I think, how am I going to go to a psychologist? And I was reading in a magazine,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was like a fashion magazine, and it was saying all these things. So I call just my general doctor, and I got an appointment, and I was kind of embarrassed to ask, but I said, I think that I have ADHD. And so it took like a month or 2 months for them to finally get an appointment to go in there. But once I did that, and they give you this test list, there's about 10 questions. And of course, I passed them all. And I passed them all. But the biggest thing for me was that I was inattentive. So they totally missed the inattentiveness. I was just this really patient, just
Yeah,
kind of lolly kind of girl, dreamy
yeah.
girl.
It's they do miss it with a lot of the girls.
And a lot of I've read this, a lot of the testing and studies that I've seen, that I've read, are mostly with men or boys
Mm-hmm.
and not with girls. And girls are the most undiagnosed. And I wasn't at the time, I don't think that I was a really fidgety kid, but I notice now that I'm more fidgety now than I was as a I'm more fidgety now as an adult. And even my mother, she would just say, well, you were just so patient and good, so I wasn't the kid climbing up the curtains or, wrecking the room. I was just really quiet and shy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was misdiagnosed by that. And I think to myself now, how much, if I was diagnosed, how much would I have retained more
Mm-hmm.
being able to follow the steps than not follow the steps in school? So I just totally missed it. And I was a borderline student. I made
Wow.
I was a borderline student. I just barely passed. And some things I got and some things I didn't.
Okay. And out of curiosity, was your son diagnosed?
My son, okay, once I figured out that I was that way,
Oh, okay.
then I start looking at my son, and I would have to bring him. I think he was 8. He was 8 at the time, but even I noticed it even at kindergarten. I would
Hmm.
have to bring him back to the table and go, okay, we're going to do this at the kitchen table and work. That should have taken him 15 minutes, took him 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And he was he's more he's a little bit of he has the hyper part of it, but not the overly hyper part, but then he has the inattentive part of it too. He has kind of both.
Yeah.
And
Combination.
yes, and so once I started having to bring him back to the table, and the little kids would come up and go, Miles, can you play now? And he was like, no, I can't play now. And that happened to me all the time as a
Hmm.
child. It'd be dark outside and I'd still be doing my homework where the other kids were playing, and it was just so unfair to me. And but with my son, it was just really hard. And I started thinking, once I started taking that medicine, I started seeing it that he must have that. He must
Okay.
have that. And even a teacher, not the first teacher. He has a summer birthday, and I have a summer birthday. And so what happened was, and this is a really interesting topic for people that retain their children,
Hmm.
but um, me and my husband at the time decided that before he even went to school that he would be retained because we both had summer birthdays.
Yeah.
And so what happened is um, we just always thought he would be retained. And so that's what we did. But it was all about the approach that you retain your child. It's not that you're holding him back. I would say, how would you like to be the oldest one in your class? And he would say, yeah. He go, yeah, mom. I said, how would you like to be driving before anyone else? Yeah, mom. And that's the approach that we took with it. And I was talking to a principal at the time, and she told me, she said, so many parents just resist it if a teacher says, I think that they should be retained,
Yeah.
because they don't want to accept that in their child. And I think that goes along with the attention deficit also. And even, or I'm going really fast now, or my mind is going really fast. But even when he was retained like that, she said to me, it's all about the attitude of the parents.
It
You
is.
know, and she's a principal. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And she was totally right. She says it's just all about how they approach it to the child.
Hmm.
So, but the first teacher, it was his second time in kindergarten, and he wasn't yet diagnosed, but she said to me, I think that he may have ADHD, and he's a gifted child. He's really a creative
Yeah.
child. So he, she just, I was like, really, and I thought, you think he really is? And I think at that point it was hard for me. I never really thought about it because he wasn't climbing everything. He
Yeah.
wasn't
The going
climbing
with
it.
the stigmas of
Mm-hmm.
the kid who can't stay still.
Yes, but another thing is that he couldn't read. Like in this first grade class, when he first went to kindergarten,
Hmm.
he couldn't read. And all the other kids are so much older than him. I mean, it's so much different. But by the end of the next year, he was able to read. And then he was reading on this really high level. And even kids that are really hyper to me, I just read to him all the time. Even if he wasn't paying attention, he was still listening in the room. And I would read like Charlotte's Web, and I mean, we read really high, Charlotte's Web. I think we read Harry Potter. I think Charlotte's Web was in kindergarten the first time, and before he was retained before.
Yeah.
But we weren't diagnosed. He was not diagnosed yet, and neither was I.
Okay. So you said you were diagnosed, and then did they put you on medication after that?
Yes. I remember talking to another girl, and they had put her on another drug, I think, Wellbutrin, which, I had this approach, well, maybe I should get that. But I go to the doctor, and he says, well, Adderall. And so actually, they put me on Adderall XR. And I remember, how they gradually put it up there. And I remember thinking, I don't think it's enough. But once it was enough, I mean, I went from the whole entire kitchen, the cabinets, like just like this. But he gave me great advice, like write a list. I mean, he was a really good doctor
Mm-hmm.
to help me. I think his children had had it too.
Okay. So what was it like when you first went on went on Adderall then?
Oh, it was the best thing for me that I could have done. It really changed my life because it changed me from being, I was like really negative,
Mm-hmm.
or not negative to other people, but inside it made me feel really bad about myself. Like, why can't I complete these things? Why can't
Mm-hmm.
I do these certain little tasks? And and it was really hard for me. And I just remember it was like a whole new world opened up, like rose-colored glasses. Like I was able to focus with the glass, like, I can see now. I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't see before. And I started analyzing things. Like I would analyze the whole entire room and go, oh, I need to start here. And I started reading. Another really good thing is I started reading about like what kind of games could I play to help me get these tasks done.
Oh,
I
okay.
think that was later on. I think that was later on, but it was just a really great thing for me. And it just opened up my whole world. And somehow, I started reading books. And the more information that I read, the better it was for me.
Yeah. So you read books on ADHD and how to get organized and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, yes. And I was able to read a book and complete, and it was really good. It was just a really eye opener, and I think it saved my life and a lot of things I didn't understand about myself.
Okay. So what types of things did you learn about yourself?
That
Well,
I could do it on my own, and I
yeah.
didn't have other people to do it. That I could look at these things and started on my own, and used to be able to like do proportions. Like I could figure out how certain things could fit in a box where I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't do that before. And I would just throw things together. With this, I didn't. I tried to organize it. But another thing um, is that it helped me control my tongue. It was a field. It helped me to control myself and my mind from it getting out here faster from here. It
Yeah.
it really did help me in that sense.
Okay. And so you got on Adderall. Are you still on Adderall?
Yes, I still take it.
Okay.
Um, I still take it. I think it's probably people that don't take it don't understand,
Yeah.
and a lot of people view it as, why are you on that? But it just really helped me, and I seem to have people that um, I think people think that, oh, you shouldn't be on it, but this is just me, and
Yeah.
it's really helped me. If not, I would just be like laying around and going, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, and put things off. And I stopped doing that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I have to take things one step further. If I say I need to take out the trash, well, I need to go ahead and do it and not wait for tomorrow. Just go ahead and make it one more step. That
Yeah.
seems to help me.
Okay. And so, what were some of the skills that you started working on yourself? Because, as they say, pills don't build skills.
No, they don't. They don't build skills, that's for sure. I had a really bad, I taking the medicine helped me with the concept of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I had no concept of time. And when I first started taking it, I'd go, oh, wow. And I was like really in depth, in detail. And, sometimes some people go, it scares them because it goes really fast. But that goes away. That nervousness to me
Mm-hmm.
went away from me then. And, but I began to, I would set the timer on.
Oh.
I would set the timer on in the on the oven,
Mm-hmm.
but I also would walk around with at the time I had an iPod, an iPod, and
Yeah.
I would set the timer on there and carry that around. And sometimes I would listen to things online where my podcast either music or things I would download, I would listen to it. And the timer thing, that oven thing really helped me. It helped me pace. I'd go,
Yeah.
okay, 10 minutes. What can I do in 10 minutes? And I'd run around my house and this is crazy stuff. But it really did help
Yeah.
me to keep that focus on time. And I go, okay, it's about time that timer went off. And then I would try maybe I started at 20 minutes until I could pace myself.
Mm-hmm.
And but it worked.
And you still use that?
Well, I've gotten away from that, and I need to start that back again because I've had a lot go on. I've had a lot go on in my life, and I think my brother passed away.
Oh,
So
okay.
just these things that are grieving, and I think that
Mm-hmm.
kind of got me off of the schedule of doing that. And but I need to start back doing that again. But the funniest thing is when the iPhone is the best for me,
Mm-hmm.
and I wouldn't be able to live without that. My people go, well, how can you pay that amount of money? But it really is to save my life because of the fact that it has a timer on it. I can't spell, so I put stuff in there and it helps me spell.
Mm-hmm.
So,
What are your favorite apps on there?
the reminders.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have reminders?
Well, my wife's the one with the iPhone that she won't let me touch.
Oh, well, that's why, because she's like me. But I have this one app that's like reminders, and it's a list, and you can type it in and write it in. And I have it says Shelley's reminder list, and I write things in there. But I can say when I leave,
Mm-hmm.
wherever the location is, and I leave, it'll go off and it'll remind me to call somebody, or it'll remind me, if you set it up and you go into the notes, it'll remind you at different times or different settings or in the month or whatever. It's just like a honey-do list, but I don't
Yeah.
believe honey-do list. Or, I don't, but it's funny because even the clock timer, I set that too. And I set it to, okay, I have to leave here at 1, but I'm going to set it at 1:30. I have to be walking out the door by 1, but 1:45 is what I'm going to say I'm going to leave
Mm-hmm.
at, and I had to do that in my car, set it 15 minutes fast, and that would drive my son crazy. But I had to do that,
Mm-hmm.
to be on time. But let's see, what else are my other favorite apps that are on here? Um, Maps.
Yeah.
Yeah, I live by that. The map on here, because I have no sense of direction, like north, south, east, or like I don't know. So, but I know in traveling, I know, like say, if I go to Atlanta, I know that I'm going to be going west. I know Charleston's east. So, but the maps has really helped me also. And my other favorite one is iTunes. I mean,
Yeah.
not iTunes. My other favorite one is the podcast, because I listen to stuff.
Yeah.
And then if I get bored, Scrabble.
Mm-hmm. That's my wife's
And
favorite game on the iPhone too. That's one thing I find. A lot of these ADHDers are very similar.
yeah, that's really true. Let's see, what's the other one? Um, the Holy Bible. I do that.
Yeah.
I have that one. Another one that my daughter and I found were the Disney radio, and sometimes eBay.
Yeah.
not to buy anything, but to sell it.
Ooh.
Not buy anything, but sell it. So I do that sometimes. It costs
Help.
more, but
Yeah.
sometimes I do that too.
Yep. Help get rid of some of the clutter in your house.
Yeah. Yes, that's true. The well, of course, the email too.
All right. So one thing that how we connected was I saw your comment on Dr. Hallowell's Facebook page, and you talked about the people who helped mentor you and be part of the team. Could you tell me a little bit about your experience with that?
Yeah, well, the first time that I ever had anybody, like growing up, I like didn't understand. I didn't understand like certain things about myself, and I
Mm-hmm.
felt really stupid and really dumb. And I had, I think I overheard my mom talking to a lady, to one of my teachers,
Mm-hmm.
and she said, well, the lady said, well, I think she has a learning disability. And my mom says, yeah, I think so too. And my mom was a preschool teacher, but she knew that there was something different about me, but she just couldn't figure out exactly what that was. And so growing up, I felt really, not very, I just felt different, and I
Okay.
was really shy. I felt more, I don't know. I would get really upset about at myself sometimes, and to the point where I would just be bawling, crying, and it was
Oh yeah.
because I didn't understand. And I was dating this guy at the time, and I would talk. He was probably one of the first persons that I could tell how I really felt,
Mm-hmm.
and that I could be open to. And he kept saying to me, he kept saying, Michelle, you can be tested. There's something you can do about that. You're not the only one. And he kept saying that, um, there's something that you can do about it. And he was the first person who really believed in me like that, that we could talk about it. And he would say, but he just believed in me. And it just took that one person that
Yeah.
believed in me. And then I go to my mom and I say, but mom, I want to be tested. And she was like, what? So she didn't really ever think about that either in that sense. But he was really the first one that really helped me be able to get, to another level
Yeah.
and be tested.
And this was
But
at 17 when you were
yeah,
17?
yeah,
Okay.
this was at 17, and I decided at 17, and they did a personality test and they do all those testings, but they didn't catch that I have the nonverbal learning disability. She didn't totally catch that at all. And it was a lady, it was here at the Citadel. It was a lady that was had a private practice. And so she tested me. And when they did that, they didn't catch that. It just said borderline, borderline.
Okay.
But I couldn't write a paper. I
Mm.
and I still today can't write a paper, and I can't write a paragraph, and I put all these sentence fragments in there. Even when I type, I don't I can diagram the sentence, but I can't write the paragraph or the sentence.
Oh, okay.
And I don't have any order to it
Mm-hmm.
at all. But when I read, I can read, but I can't comprehend what I read.
Oh, okay.
So it was just a different thing.
Yeah. Well, that is different, and so definitely glad you were able to put on those glasses later on in
Oh,
life.
kidding? Oh, yes. It was like just a big eye-opening thing for me. And then I would think, well, could I go back to school and get a degree? What could I do with this? And there's so much more now than there is then,
Mm-hmm.
but I did have a lot of anxiety as a child growing up. And I found that, I mean, I would wake up on the hour, anticipating the bus. The first day of school, the first day of first grade, I threw up, and I
Mm-hmm.
threw up at school, but I didn't want anybody to know. I was just this really shy child.
Yeah.
But with my son, I've noticed that he has anxiety also. And I found myself sometimes you know, I don't know. I found I would have to catch myself from giving him, from just making him feel I found myself saying these things that were negative that I knew I shouldn't say, and I
Hmm.
caught myself doing that. That's a really bad thing that
Yeah.
we have as parents.
Yeah, that negative self-talk, and of course the kids internalize that too.
Yeah, and I did. And I most definitely did internalize that with myself. And that was probably one of the hardest things to stop that I was doing.
Hmm.
And and I just knew that my son did that. I just knew that he did, even though
Yeah.
he wouldn't talk about it. I knew that he did. And it's such a bad thing for kids to do that. And you should be able to talk to your child um, about the ADHD. And the other people that, well, Dr. Hallowell, he like really opened up my eyes to a
Hmm.
lot of things. And I had read one other ADHD book, and he really opened up my eyes when I read that, and it was kind of a flip book, that I could flip into. And but I saw him on TV. Was the first time that I saw him,
Okay, was this
and
before or after your official diagnosis?
it was I was interested in it because it was the learning disability. I don't remember. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't really remember. I don't remember. I'd have to think about that. But but once I read that, and it said wipe all critical people out of your life. And I really, because I was a pleaser at the
Yeah.
time, and I would want to please people. But I found myself thinking, well, I'm not getting anything done, and why should I go out of my way? They don't come, like if I would go over to their house, and why can't they come over to my house? Or why do I have to go go out of my way when I have more things to do at home than, and I don't know. And then, some people I couldn't wipe out, but I started thinking, don't throw those psych bombs on me, that people would throw
Yeah.
at me. And I started thinking, okay, well, don't answer the phone after a certain time of the
Hmm.
night, like after 9 or 8,
Yeah.
and don't answer the phone that people that are going to, set you off. Because I think in ADHD, I think that we like fights sometimes. We like to pick at each other, and that high of it. And I started, I, I stopped doing that. The other thing that I stopped doing was I stopped them from letting me go there. Like I didn't listen to them.
Hmm.
It, because they would say some really critical things about me. And I would think, don't let yourself wide open like that. If you
Yeah.
just have a little bit of a door open, then they can't really get to you.
Hmm.
And I would let people get to me. I
Yeah.
would have to say, "Oh, I'm sorry," or I would feel guilty about what I did. What I did, even though I didn't do anything wrong, I would still apologize. And that was totally, I didn't have to do that.
No.
I learned a lot about myself.
Yeah. So what are some of the things you do now to stop yourself, especially with the ADHD mind, where you're going 10 million miles a minute, to stay on the positive mindset versus negative? Oh, how did I do that wrong? Oh, I'm lazy. I didn't get to that task over there. How do you get yourself out of that mindset?
Accepting yourself is the biggest thing. Accept yourself. And when you start a task and then you go, okay, I can't do this task, bring other people in. Bring other people in to help you. And
Hmm.
there's nothing wrong with that. And another thing is that, wait a minute. You might have to ask me that question again. Ask me that question again. You said what people.
Well, just how do you, when you yourself or when others are get get you on that negative mindset? Because sometimes you can stay in that little negative rut, and I'm lazy, I'm dumb, I'm stupid, I can't do this, I'm a terrible mother, that type of thing. How?
Somehow I think that somehow I stopped doing that. And I would think I'm not going to go there with myself because
Mm-hmm.
I would do self pity. I would do that self pity stuff. I did that for a really long time. I probably did it my whole entire life until one day I was listening to a lady speak, and she said the opposite. It was like the opposite of pride, or the opposite with like self pity is pride.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, I'm not going to do that anymore. And I stopped doing that self pittiness. And I think God helped me do that. That's a really hard thing to
Yeah,
stop.
it is.
It's a really hard thing to stop. But I would just think, God doesn't think that about me.
Mm-hmm.
So why? Why should I think that about myself? He accepts me for who I am. And I think that you have to surround yourself with people who understand you and accept you. And look, I started to look at my other people and think, well, why are they late? Or what do they have going on in their life that's really, why are they that way?
Mm-hmm.
And I started looking at, well, they're just ADHD, and I'm not going to take that personal. Like, say, if you wanted to, if they forgot, let me think, like if they forget to call you, or they say they're going to do something with you and they forget,
Mm-hmm.
I always have to go, oh, well, they're ADHD, and then that they probably just forgot, and don't take it personal.
Yeah.
I have to kind of do that because I seem to, have others that are ADHD that we hang around. Usually
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
ADHD
You
people
find each
all hang
other.
around to each other. Yes, are usually attracted to each other because of the excitement that
Mm-hmm.
goes on. But I'm really flexible and I'm really easygoing
Mm-hmm.
person. But if there's something wrong, I start complaining. Then you know that there's something wrong.
Yeah.
But
Well, well, one thing I do find interesting about you, like with you talking about that, but your profession, at least on your Facebook, you say you're a model and you got all these beautiful pictures of yourself. How does that relate to ADHD, and how did you get into that? And also, definitely the stereotype with modeling is it is a very negative industry with a lot of negative self-talk that the girls go
mhm.
through too.
It really is, and it's a very competitive. It's a really competitive business. But okay, let's go. Let me take this one direction at a time.
Yeah.
So, okay, how did I get started modeling?
Yeah.
Well, I was supposed to. I was Okay, I started modeling when I was really young, like I say about 14. And
Okay.
some of this I kind of forgot, and I've gone back to my past a
Mm-hmm.
little bit to remember the things that I had forgotten about myself, just to try to pull myself out even more. And and then I think that having a diagnosis as an adult of the nonverbal really uplifted me. It was very empowering to me to really now understand what actually went on with you, and now I know why. And so I started modeling when I was about 14. I was a really shy girl,
Mm-hmm.
and I went to a modeling agency, and I started because I was so shy, and it was like a school type, and not all models go to schools, and you don't have to go to a school, but I started doing this, and I take these different classes, and this happens from like ninth grade all the way to a senior in high school. And they had these conventions. The lady's name was Millie Lewis, was the
Okay.
name of the modeling school, which is like really big in South Carolina. And she was a famous model, and her daughter was also a model, and her daughter ran the school where I was. And um, they always taught you about there's more than just beauty. There's got to be more in here to come out, because if
Mm-hmm.
you don't, you're not really, it, you know, it. It's just more. it's more about you inside and the outside. And I find that when you're really beautiful on the inside, it shows from the
Mm-hmm.
outside. And what happens is that I start going to I become a senior in high school, and I'm a senior in high school, and I go to this convention the summer before, and I found a scout that I saw, and she says, "I want you." It was with Sue Charney Modeling Agency, and I think the lady's name was Joyce or something. But um, she says, "Call me once you finish school. Call me." And she said, "I want you to come to New York."
Okay.
And I was like, okay, that's really cool. So it comes that time, and it's like May or springtime or January. It's somewhere in there. And I call and they say, "Oh, she no longer works here." So I totally lost the contact. And it is about, seeing the people who you know in these different agencies. And I learned that I was like, what am I going to do? I was just really devastated by
Mm-hmm.
it. And I had no real direction. I ended up staying, not going off to school right away. I stayed here, and a lot of my friends went away, and there was dating the same guy. And I remember calling him and saying, I was just like totally devastated, like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Because I just totally lost that. And I don't know why. Why didn't I send pictures to your other agencies? Why did I think that that was just my one egg in the basket? I didn't
Mm-hmm.
branch out in that sense. But and I think that I did it all on my own. Like, my parents didn't help me. It was just all about, you do it on your own. And so then I started I started to go thinking, well, I like clothes and I like fashion and I like things like that. So I decided I was going to go up to a school in Atlanta. So I go to school there,
Mm-hmm.
and I finished the school, and I'm working in the store at Lenox. And when I'm looking at the store, when I see the store at Lenox, when I'm working in the store, this lady comes through, and she has this big, huge hat on,
Yeah.
and she's like peering through. And I worked in the store, and the but let me back up,
Okay.
because like six months before that, I had gone in the same agency, and they, as an open call, and they said, well, let me see your book. Without this, here's some photographers to use and go test. But I didn't do that. I was like, I was just really frightened.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I did was, that lady comes peering in, and she goes, "Here's my card," and she said, here's my card, here's my number," and she said, "I want you to test." And she said, "No, I'm legitimate. I'm not just anybody." And I said, "Yes." Well, it was the same agency, just another person.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember the next day, I called my mom, and I said, "Well, this lady wants me to test." And I told my mom all about it, and mom's like, "Okay, yeah." So then the next morning, she calls where I'm working in the morning. She goes, "I've already got you set up with a test, and I have all this stuff." And so she set me up with a test, and with a photographer already, the makeup artist, the stylist, and my mom puts it on her credit card. My mom puts it on her credit card, and she pays for it. And thank God that she was willing to do that. Well,
Mm-hmm.
6 months, no, 6 weeks later, I get a contract to go to Japan. And
Wow.
I only had, like, they only took two people, and it was me and another girl. And at the time, it was with Folio Models. And my booker, Lisa Carey, she kept saying to me, "Michelle, you're so lucky. You're so lucky." She said she only took two people, and she's like the Ford of Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And so I go with her, and I have only maybe probably 7 or 8, 10 pictures in my book. And then by the time I get to Japan, I only have like 4 or 5. They took all the ones out. But it was like 6 weeks and I started modeling then.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really how it evolved of me going there.
Okay, and so how did that play to your ADHD strengths?
Oh, because you have to be really flexible at modeling. And they go, okay, can you be here at 10 o'clock on this day? Or can you be here? Or these are your details for, tomorrow. And nothing's planned. You can
Mm-hmm.
never plan anything. And you never know if you're going to get work or you're not going to get work. And to me, it was never boring. I was never bored. I was never bored. And the other thing I did was with modeling, and this is what a lot of people, didn't get. And
Mm-hmm.
there, you go all in groups, and you're always with other models, girls
Okay.
and guys. And they sometimes, with this one agency, you'd all be in a van. So there are all these egos in a van. There's a lot of, hold on.
Yeah.
There are a lot of egos in a van, and there's a lot of discussion. There's a lot of, it's really interesting. There are a lot of vegans. There are ones that aren't. It's just a lot of different people. And so what happens is that, you don't know if you're going to work today, or you might not work tomorrow, or you might not, work at all. I mean, it's just you just don't know. It's just a
Yeah.
hit or miss thing. And I remember this one girl this is after I'd already been to Japan once, and then I decided that I'm going to go back, and I went back with another agency this other time, and they were really nice, and they would just talk to you and all, and I happened to meet this girl, and I think I'd been there twice, I think twice, maybe 3 times. No, twice. I don't know. Anyway, she happens to be my roommate, and she's from the South, and her name is Molly Mason. She happens to be from the South, and she we would just be walking, and she'd say, "Oh, but those girls are so jealous of me,"
Mm-hmm.
and I would say, this is a business. Now, I don't know where all this, I don't know how I just looked at modeling as a business.
Yeah.
I looked at it as people. Like when you meet people, you never know. Like networking, you never know who they're going to be. So you should be nice to other people, because you never know who they might know that you might know that might help in business.
Yeah.
And that was another thing that I learned. But she would just get really upset and take it personal. I was like, this is a business. And I said, we're from the South. And I said, don't pay any attention to the other girls over here. It's a business. Just keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to her, and she reminded me that I had told her that this is a business and don't pay any attention to them.
Yeah.
And so I learned to separate that God made me special and there was no one else like me. And I was able to separate the cattle calling of all these models. Only one girl's going to get that job. Maybe 2 girls are going to get the job, and not all the other girls that are going to get that. And when I would get a job, I would get all excited, and I'd be like, yes, yes. I would like be jumping up and down. But it was one of the best things I ever did in my life was to model. And looking at it as a business, and it's an adult. There are a lot of girls that are 12, 14, but they're making adult decisions in modeling. I mean, or 16, 17,
Yeah.
and that sometimes, I mean, I made mistakes in modeling, but I don't know, it's just a part. I learned the most, I ran my own business because
Mm-hmm.
I was considered self-employed. And even though, I did that, I was able to kind of go, okay, it's a business. Put money in your pictures. And I wish I would have even traveled more than I did. The traveling, you go all over, and sometimes you run into people that from another agency. You have to be really flexible in
Yeah.
modeling, but you have to be on time, and you have to have the attitude that you're working. And I can remember people arguing over how to hold a peanut. And I was like, yeah, let's let them argue how I should hold the peanut because I'm getting paid, and the longer I would go, I was getting paid by time. But um I don't know. It's just a really, I don't know. I just loved it. I really
Aren't you still doing
excelled.
it?
Yeah, yes. Well, I've kind of I stopped for a while, and I'm going to start back again, but I'm waiting. This is really the bad part about it, is that I'm waiting on, I have something that's coming because I have to start testing again, and I
Mm-hmm.
haven't started it yet because I've had so much and I get really overwhelmed. This
Yeah.
is another bad thing about ADHD. I get overwhelmed. I start crying.
Oh.
I and I
Yeah.
and I get really overwhelmed, and I just can't handle it, and I have to go to somebody else. And I still do this, I still do that. I get really overwhelmed, and I fall apart.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one thing that I still do.
And so, how do you put yourself back together?
Usually I go and talk to someone, and sometimes I have to realize my limits of what I can do and what I can't do.
Yeah.
Because, I would say, well, I can't really do that or pull that out or start that yet. I think it's accepting yourself of
Mm-hmm.
what you really can do and what you can't. But I, I stopped doing it for a while, and they let me grow up. I went from a junior, and I was like 22, 24, and I was still a junior. But I always took care of myself. That's the one thing about modeling. You have to kind of do that because there's a lot of in Japan, you know, they want all of us to mingle, and we would go in bars and things like that and dance clubs, and then the Japanese people would want to dance with us and things like that. It was fun. It was a really great experience for me.
All right. So that's fantastic. We're coming up near the end of the hour, but definitely had a fascinating conversation. So, what are some of the top things you'd say to other people like yourself with ADHD? And
Don't ever give up on yourself.
yeah.
And don't ever give up on yourself. And just because one person has a certain view of you doesn't mean that other people may be different. They have another view of you. Just like with modeling, like just because one agency said no, there isn't two or three more agencies that might like you that are different parts. So don't give up. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. And just because one thing doesn't open, don't give up on yourself. I gave
Mm-hmm.
up on myself a lot when I was younger. And I just think, okay, I can do it. I can keep going. I can keep going. And don't let anything get in your way of what you really want to do. Determination. I
Mm-hmm.
think people sometimes are pessimistic, especially with younger, younger girls. And I think the more you read about it, the more you accept yourself about it, the more you understand. And I feel like sharing with other people is the best thing that I could do because I have a lot of, I have a lot of pain from,
Yeah.
pain from the things I didn't understand about myself. But now they're just totally, they're just scars there. It's not painful anymore like it used to be for
Mm-hmm.
me. And the more I talk about it and share, the better I am and the better it is for other people. I don't want anyone to have to suffer. And
No.
I think a lot of people don't know their rights, especially in education or the
Mm-hmm.
things that they can do.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot more resources out there than when you were younger.
Yeah, oh, most definitely. Most definitely. And I what else? Let's see that I could share. Just, don't give up on yourself.
Yeah.
No one's ever given up on me. And I would think, oh, Lee, God hasn't given up on me. But and I know that people have different views of God, and God are different to other people. So as long as you have some type of foundation or religion in you to believe in who
Hmm.
you are, and to put other people in your life that are positive, that validate that don't criticize you and go, well, why is she hiding the fact that she takes medicine? Or why is she hiding the fact that, she really is attention deficit? I look at people a lot today and I go, oh, they're attention deficit, but I don't say anything because a lot of people don't want to accept that about
No.
themselves.
Yeah, they're not willing to look in the mirror.
I can see it sometimes, but then sometimes I think, oh, I just, keep my mouth shut. Sure.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Michelle, for this first interview. I'm going to end the recording in just a little bit,
Okay,
and
well,
we'll just.
thank you so much for taking the time out to step out and say, "Hey, Michelle, I liked what you said," because it's all about us sharing. And if you
It
wouldn't have
is.
done that, and this is something that I've always wanted to do is help others. I don't want anyone to suffer like I did.
No, and definitely it's something Stephanie and I are hoping to continue on. So, to all our listeners out there, thank you for listening, and just ending this recording. And please leave your comments and share your love with Michelle and other ADHDers out there.
Thank you.